Good morning or good afternoon, I should say, to all of you lovely people in Cookham. I'm Susan Clare, and I'm delighted to be painting a Christmassy version of my jungly tropical garden today. Yes, I'm hoping that we won't have too many hiccups with electricity and stuff like that. That is a part of living in the tropics, so fingers crossed for all of that. So welcome. I think we should probably go through a couple of little things about housekeeping before we get into the meat of the demonstration. So just to let you know, I probably should mute you all for now, and then I will ask one of you, I think, was going to help by maybe reading out the questions, because once I go to my other camera and start painting, I won't see the chat screen coming up. So if people do have any questions, I'm very happy to answer questions while I'm painting. And if you'd like to ask a question, you need to tap on where it says chat and then type in your little question. And then we'll have one person from the committee who will read them out to me so that we don't get a lot of background noise. Does that make sense? Yes. So which one of you would like to be nominated as, and I will, I'm going to mute. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Do then is see if you can unmute yourself on the list. Well, you probably can since you spoke to me a minute ago.
Yes, I'm unmuted.
Okay, that's lovely. So now we've just got you and me talking for noise. I will give you a chance later on for a more general chat if you'd like. Just so that you know what my plan is, I'm going to give you a quick introduction and then I'm going to start painting, and there will be times when I'm waiting for something to dry or a few interruptions like that. So in those instances, I can come back to the desk and talk to you face to face and answer longer questions and things like that. Okay, so just to give you a bit of an introduction to me, I am English. I'm talking to you from Jamaica, and I've had the privilege to spend a large amount of my adult life living here in Jamaica. I came to teach scuba diving, ended up running a scuba diving business in a resort, and that's another story for a different demo. So I am inspired mostly by the environment, underwater, seascapes, and of course my lovely garden. I'm very lucky to have been able to build a little cottage on a hilltop in Jamaica, and we are trying to be self-sufficient in terms of energy and water and all of those things. So it's all a big adventure. And this is my studio in the upstairs of my house. And so my garden has been, since I started painting about 20 years ago, has been a huge inspiration for me. And by the word garden, I'm using that very loosely. In England, we sort of think of a nice, well-kept lawn and some flower beds and coaxing things through the winter so that they're nice and safe in the spring, and patting yourself on the back if you don't lose any flowers, right? Well, here in Jamaica, it's more of a case of trying to keep up with things that are growing wild and getting out of hand. So it's a lot more about cutting back things and just managing, and we make our own compost and all of the sort of those kind of things. We don't have anything you could really call a lawn. The land is about 45 degrees slope, so it's all little pathways and raised up flower beds and natural stone limestone everywhere. So we have a lot of natural sort of overhanging little walkways. It's like secret passages to go through another bit of the garden, and a lot of the plants are really tall. So it's quite exciting. It's a bit more like a jungle than a garden. So when I usually do this talk, I paint things like tall heliconias, the wild bananas that you've probably seen in the florist shops, and birds of paradise and things like that. But because it's Christmas, I thought we had to bring in a Christmassy theme. So I am going to paint for you a poinsettia, which you might think, well, we've got poinsettias, why is that special? Well, ours actually grow out along the roadsides and in the gardens, and they get to about 4 or 5 feet high. So I was looking for reference pictures and found a few. I'll share them with you now, actually. If I just share my screen, I think that we can have a look at some of these. So this one, I think you should be seeing this. So this is a poinsettia that I bought just in case ours in the garden didn't turn red. I don't know if you know, but they need to be in the dark to turn red. So when they grow along the roadsides, it's really interesting in that they got red in the places where there are no streetlights. And that's convenient for us because on our hilltop, we have one streetlight, I think, for the whole hilltop. But so this one I bought just in case. And let's see if we can see another view of it. I should have put these all in a link together. I thought they were going to. And then just in case, well, what I was really looking for was the ones in my neighbour's garden. And this is just on the outside of her garden, growing along the roadside. And so I thought it might be nice to paint them as they grow rather than, you know, rounded and in a pot. So I have, I'm going to use this as my reference picture. What I like about it is that it feels like there's a path for your eye to travel through. You've got the sense of, I'm going to probably exaggerate this one a little bit bigger in the composition so that it stands out nicely. And I love that feeling of when you have things going away in the distance and everything gets sort of, the horizontal lines get closer together and flatter, as even though it's not very far from here, it's only like 3 feet further back, but you still see that sense of things going away towards the horizon line or the eye level and getting flatter. And I love that feeling. You'll see it in a lot of my landscape paintings. So that I'm not able to share this with you all the time. So I have actually, you'll see I've got an actual plant sitting beside me here, which you'll be able to see when I'm painting. So we've got 2 senses of references there. When I get ready to paint, I'd usually make myself do a few thumbnail sketches. Again, I'll show you those on the screen. Just in my sketchbook. So this is a page from my sketchbook that I did yesterday. And I always force myself to do 4 different views. That way I can choose, do I want a horizontal, do I want a vertical, or even a square? And I usually won't let myself start painting until I've done one of each, just to be sure that I haven't missed a better idea. So you can see that some of these would have been very large, like one rosette of, they're not actually flowers, you know, they're the red parts are bracts and the flowers are right in the center. We'll go into that a bit more when I'm actually painting them. So this is the scene from on the roadside. And then these were just taken from looking at the plant that I bought and seeing if I can, you know, get a really nice up close, vibrant look. I decided that this one might be the best. You can notice that I just keep it to sort of darks and lights and medium grays. So I know where the darkest darks are, the lightest lights, and how the eye is led through the pathway of the lights or the pathway of the darks when I'm preparing. So let's move on. So while I'm painting, I'm going to switch over to my other camera for you and make that the spotlight for everybody. So just bear with me one sec. Find the right spot to do that. It should be up here, yes. And yeah, so you'll be seeing now my my paper. So we're doing a watercolor on paper, and I'm also going to add in some mixed media elements. Okay, I'm just getting rid of the sound notification here. So I worked on thick paper. This is really a heavy weight. This is 300 pounds weight arches, and that's about 555 grams, I think, if you want it in metric. So it really doesn't, it barely bends, you know, when you lift it up, it's almost like cardboard. But I find that that way I don't have to stretch it. I can just clip it onto my board and go for it, even though I'm going to be saturating it with a lot of water and other materials. So just to give you a whirl around my station before I start. So I've got my paper onto a piece of hardboard and some clips. I'm working upright on an easel because I've actually developed this way of working for demonstrations, but now I'm quite attached to it, even though for a Zoom I probably could be working with the painting horizontally. Somehow it feels more exciting to do it vertically because I've gotten used to adapting watercolour so that it can run. So I have a nice large palette here, which has my paints laid around sort of in a colour wheel. It's not perfect, but it's almost. I like to have it that way just so that it reminds me if I want something opposite, I just go directly opposite where I am. And I have large brushes here. So this is a 2-inch Polar Flow wash brush. Please don't look at the chewed off bit. There's had an accident with some masking fluid one day, but it still works well. I love these quill brushes. I have several quill brushes like that. Then I have a couple of flats as well. So I'm going to be using a nice big puddle of several different colours when I get to the painting part. Before that, I'm just going to throw in some, you probably can't see, I did put a few pencil lines on here. I always find it's rather boring in demos to watch somebody drawing out the entire thing. So instead of that, what I'm going to do is to add in a few bits of pastel. Now, this also means that I can finish a painting for you in 2 hours instead of it taking me a week. So what I'm going to do to start with is I have my reference picture and my plant here. References on my iPad. So I'm going to go ahead and put in some of the yellows, which are actually the flowers, which we see in the centre of those little, actually I just need to move that, it's shining, in the centre of the arrangements. So I'm just working very intuitively. I'm not trying to look for biological details here. I sort of know that I can do that if I want to. And I've let go of that some time ago and decided that what I'm aiming for is to get something that's very much more about the feeling of what's going on. So forgive me if we have some botanical artists in the audience. And I absolutely love botanical art as well. So don't feel slighted. I do love it. I just don't feel that that's what I want to be doing at the moment. As a biology student, when I was at college, you know, that was such a priority for me. I just sort of feel that I have done that. And now I want to do something more expressive, more intuitive, and give me more freedom to express with colours, shapes, patterns, and things like that. So now you can see where my flower heads are going. These are
oil pastels or?
Yes, good question, thank you. So these are just reeds, nothing special. What I don't want is the crumbly ones that are very expensive, of course, but also they would fall off the paper too much. This is a watercolour, and I don't want to have to frame it like a pastel. So these are the heavy oil pastels, and they're just going to act like a resist when I add on the water. So it's kind of just a little trick to help me to, well, you'll see in a minute that it's quite easy to get lost the way I paint. So it's just a way to help me to see where I'm at and add some texture and some interesting patterning into some of the leaves and petals. We don't want to be sort of slavish about this going everywhere with it. The other thing is that because you'll notice I hardly put any graphite marks in my drawing, and that's because using these means you can't rub out the graphite as easily, so I don't want there to be very much on there in the first place. So I'm just, I can use these on their side, I can use them like a pencil, And I can use them, you know, they're great for like craggy rocks and stuff like that too. I'm using yellow here because one of the things I've noticed when you're painting strong red flowers, it's quite often easy to lose all the lights in the painting. So in order to try and safeguard some of those lights, I find it helpful to just put in a few tricks and details with yellows or sometimes whites, just to make sure that there is some light left coming through. Yeah, so I'm not going to outline every leaf, but you can see that I'm sort of picking out a few that there are some, as I mentioned before, the red things are actually bracts, or they're a leaf that turns red. They're not a flower petal. So the shape of these red ones is going to be exactly the same as the green ones. And here you've got some that are in the middle of changing in between from red to green, and you get these lovely yellow bits in there too. You can see that. So that's kind of what makes it quite exciting, that you've got transition and you've got repetition and rhythm, because the patterns are the same in nearly all of the leaves. So I'm just going to emphasize some of these coming forward. If you'll notice in the, well, you probably won't notice because you can't see the references at the moment, but I've kind of squeezed up the gaps. I didn't want quite so much green all over the place. So I've cheated a bit and put more red in the composition than you would normally see. I apologise, that's my neighbour's dog starting to bark. I hope I'm not going to be a bit distracting. The hounds are baying. Okay. So, any other questions at the moment?
Not so far.
Sorry?
Not so far.
No, okay. Okay. Oh goodness. It's because somebody's driven up and they don't know the vehicle, I think. They should settle down in a minute. Okay. So again, I don't want this to be too much of a huge feature. So we're moving from yellow now into some muddy greyish green and greys. And I love to put some of these into what I don't want is to do an enormous amount of work on the leaves when it comes to that, because that's very time consuming. And I mean, it can create beautiful works, but as I said, that's not really what I'm looking to do at the moment. So I'm just going to add in some sort of texture into some of the leaves to give us, to give me a bit of a roadmap when I'm painting quickly, and also because it does add some very interesting texture. Because I'm working on rough surface paper, I don't know that you're seeing this very clearly as yet. I'm going to speed up with this and move on to the next step. Can you see it, Kay, or is it very...
Yes, you can't see.
Can't see very much. Okay, I'll do this quickly then and stop talking about it so much. Okay, so yeah, it helps to do quick paintings, to just have a little bit more of a guide as to where you're up to. Partly because in a minute you'll see why I sort of lose my pencil marks anyway. So we're just going to get a couple more bits in so that you have them spread out. I don't want to just have them in one place. So we'll invent. A lot of times I've actually stopped painting leaves as such. And the reason is that, you know, there are so many leaves when you look out of the window here, that they all just merge into one greenness. So to spend the time and delineate every single one is kind of, you know, it seems redundant when your eye doesn't pick up on that anyway. So it's another reason. Okay, I think that might need a little bit over here maybe. And the center stems of these are actually lighter than the rest of the, whoops, that's not lighter, that's darker. And let's try and put some lighter bits in with the white, so you actually won't see it happening right now, but you might see it when I do the painting. Because they're all the same shapes, it's quite hard to remember which ones are red and which ones are green, really. So I may make a few mistakes here and there, but that's all right. We've got some little leaves and stuff up here, which might be nice to just play with those a bit. Okay. I usually ask in my audience how many people have been to Jamaica before. Of course, I can't really do that on this format, but if you have any little Jamaica stories, please share them. By the way, where I am is near to Montego Bay. That's our closest town. And I'm about 5 miles up into the hills. So if you know anything about Jamaica's geography, we are overlooking the cockpit country, which is one of the island's main sources. It's an important watershed or water for about 3 or 4 of the parishes, and home to a lot of protected wildlife. Of course, we're having a huge problem with that at the moment because government feels that it's important to make money and provide jobs, and they're threatening to open up some mining rights in the protected areas, which is quite heartbreaking. So I hope they don't go ahead with that. But that's one of the environmental stories that I'm watching at the moment to see how that develops, and of course raising awareness wherever I can.
Susan,
Yes.
we can't see anything. The spotlight is reflecting on the paper. It's completely white.
Okay.
Yeah, she said you wouldn't see anything at the minute. Just painting.
Well, let me start on the painting. I think you'll start to see it then. Okay. I don't actually have a spotlight on.
Oh.
So I think I'm going to start the painting and you'll start to see colour. Okay. So first of all, I like to wet down my work really well. So I'm going to use the 2-inch brush and just throw water all over it. Now, because it's such a heavy piece of paper, it can take that without any problems. And there we go. We want to go over it several times to make sure it's not just all running off the surface. We want it to soak in a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to mix down some puddles of colour. You might think, well, this is a green and red painting, but I'm going to start with yellow. I always like to start with yellow when it's appropriate. And so I'm going to mix a nice big puddle. I like to try use a transparent yellow in my first layer, so it's not going to be a cadmium yellow. This is New Gamboge, this one, or Aureolin is quite good, Aureolin. Or one of the Windsor, like Windsor Lemon, I think is transparent. I want a warm yellow for this though. I feel like it's, you want a warm Christmassy yellow. So I've mixed up a big puddle and I leave that with its own brush. Then I'm going to mix up another puddle And this is going to be my Windsor Red. And again, a nice big generous wet puddle. It's not very, very thick paint. We want it to be a wash, not, you know, not a solid sort of colour. So plenty of water there. Plus, of course, we've got lots of water on the surface of the paint, the paper already. And then just so I'm really ready for it, I'm going to mix down 2 more colours. Extra palette here. I'm going to mix down some French ultramarine and some sap green. We're probably going to need also some alizarin crimson later on. I tend to like these flowers as the sort of reddish, warm, brick red kind of glowy colours rather than the pinkiness that sometimes comes out when you photograph them. But that's a matter of personal choice. And so my sap green, I like permanent sap green as a sort of a go-to green. It's very rare that I use it by itself. It's nearly always in combination with something else. So I would either have it blended with, I don't mix my colours on the palette much. I like to mix them on the paper. I find that way that you get a much more luminous glow and exciting things happen. So when I say mix, I'm talking about letting them mix rather than contriving that mix in the palette. All right, so just put down the smaller brush. And so remembering we've already soaked our paper pretty well. I just need to put that down for a sec. I'm just going to give it a little spritz to make sure that it hasn't all soaked in. And then we're going to do the exciting bit, starting with yellows. I just want to dribble them down the page and let them go where they want to. If there were any areas that really didn't, you know, yellow was not appropriate, I would safeguard those, but that doesn't really apply in this situation. So I want to make sure I've got plenty of yellow in some of these areas where the flowers are.
Susan?
Yeah.
Please, could you try to move it sideways a little bit, because we really can't see your thing. So tilt it a little bit or twist it.
What happens if I move this forward? Is that better?
Not really, because it's the light. I don't know what kind of light you have got there, but it's reflecting on the paper.
That's better.
So it's very difficult to see. That is better, yeah.
I'm so sorry. Okay, right.
Let's try that.
Okay, so adding on the yellow now. I can pick up where it's dribbling from the bottom and add it back in. I'm trying to leave it so that it's not an entire yellow wash, although it could be, wouldn't really matter if it were. But it's nice to get some variety. What I do want to try to make sure is that I get the yellows onto those particular leaves that are in the middle of turning into red ones. They have a lot of yellow in them, so I want to make sure that those get a good dose of yellow. Okay, and sort of see like the light's coming from this side onto the composition, so we want to make sure also that that's a good amount of yellow in the background there. Okay, and then reds. So there will be a lot of red in this composition when we finish. So, but I do want it to be not only on the flowers, but also in the background here and there. And this might look alarming, but believe me, when you see how light this dries as a first wash, it's not really all that scary. Okay, so again, I'm making sure that my flowers do have red where they need it. There's kind of 3 flowers that link together over this side. And so rather than detail every particular flower separately, I want to make sure that they blend together somewhat. And I know that the red is going to build up to create some of the darks in the background. So I want to make sure that where it's needed, that we've got some good depth of red there. Some random bits of flowers left over on the side. Okay. Here you can start to see where there's a little bit of the texture that I put in white that's showing through. Another thing that I love to do is to just make sure there's some spatter to sort of integrate these colours together. And then moving on to the other 2 colours. Sorry for moving in front there. So we'll put in some greens. Of course, there are lots of greens in the lower portions. I want to get some sense of the greens running through rather than just being exactly where the leaves belong. So we'll spatter some nice into that lighter background up there. Looking like dappled light coming through. We want to run some down into this section over this side where it will add to the reds and make some nice brownish greens. Same here, what you can see we're going to be using lots and lots of green. Okay, so this being my first layer, I mean, you all know, I'm sure, that watercolour dries a lot lighter than you expect it to. So some people sort of get worried at this stage that, you know, well, I couldn't possibly do that to my painting, but it's surprising how it will dry down to be quite pale. So we need some greens. Now you can see why I need a bit of a roadmap, because I really can't see my pencil lines. And it helps to have an idea of where the flowers were and where the leaves are. Okay, so we'll be putting in some of the in-between green areas, just to make sure there's green where it belongs. And if we get to a place where we really don't want it to be, I can always dab it off again. Okay. So we want some more green up here, behind this flower. Okay. So you can see some of the pastels pushing away and creating some nice pathways for the greens to take a little tour. Are there many watercolorists in your group?
Yes, fair number.
Okay. I started painting watercolours probably when I was 6. My mum was an art teacher, amongst other things. And so it's always been my first love. But nowadays I work in acrylics as well.
Yes, most of us do other
Yeah.
as well, yes.
Okay. Are you a group that paints together, or do you just meet for this kind of thing?
No, normally we paint every week.
Oh,
Of course we can't.
oh, that's a shame. Yes, you must be missing it.
Paint together, but we're sending paintings to the newsletter so that other people can see what people have been painting.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's a good plan. Okay, so that's all. There are some green bits inside the center of these flowers. So I don't want to make it too dark, but we do need some bits of green in there where the gaps between where the bracts all come to the center, there's usually a little greenery with the little stems, and sometimes you can see through. Right, and where's this flower here? This one. Got a little bit of there. Okay. And this one needs more green around it, I think. This is all very greenery down here, a lot of greenery. Right, I'm going to move on to the blue before this gets drier. And so a lot of this blue is going to be darkening up the background, where it's kind of murky jungle back there. And we'll do some more of that later. It's not going to want it all completely to the level of dark that it's going to need right now. So, and then we've got some blues here. I usually work with paper towel in my hand. I'll get that ready. In case we want to pull out some lights and just move the darks away from where they shouldn't be running. It's quite a nice little patch of light coming through there. Don't need to go too far to the top. Okay.
Someone has said they can't see the bottom of the painting.
Okay.
A bit more of a twist might help cut reflections a bit more.
Okay.
Yeah.
This way? Or hang on, let me do the tilt first.
Oh, that's it. We've got the bottom now. The painting.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, it's hard to tell without the feedback, so thank you very much for speaking up. I really don't mind if you do. Okay, so this is going a bit too much across that pink flower there. So we'll just engineer that to be further over this way. And we've got some lights going on there. And a bit of spatter on this with the blues to just bring that dappled light through there. And I love when things like this happen. In some, you know, it's really, when those things happen and you don't want them to, it can be quite disturbing, but it's actually really hard to get them to happen when you do want it to happen. So yeah, that's one of the things that I try to work on is for these things to happen the way I want them to, but still to look like they were happy accidents. So there's quite a lot of blue content in these green leaves, I think you'll agree. So we're quite okay with putting in quite a lot of blues into the lower down leaves. Some of this may be a bit too bright and pretty over here, so we'll end up probably covering that with some more greens later. over this side, where the light's hitting more, there's going to be less of the dark blue leaves. And you can see that we're starting to get a definition of the shape of those red petals as well. Over here, we've got the 3 flowers running in together, so I'm not too worried if they're not very well defined. And we need to do a bit more on the horizon line here where the flowers meet the background, just to get a feeling of some leaves back there. Just leave that as it is. And over here, I want this to look a bit more jungly. On the side here, we can add some blues. I was going to talk about it in a break maybe, but maybe now is just as good a time. But for those of you that do enjoy painting, I'm running a course on Patreon. Well, not exactly a course, it's more like an online club. And for a monthly membership fee, you get at least 2 full-length tuition guided painting projects, and we revolve between watercolor, mixed media and acrylics. So if you only want one of those, it's still quite good value. And then on a Tuesday, we do a live Zoom session for question and answers, sharing work and fun feedback and stuff. And it's been actually a real joy to me because I've got members from Jamaica here and people in England. And it's quite lovely to see them all supporting each other and getting to know each other. So that's been a real fun. One of the positives of our lockdown situation. Okay, so I think we'll need to make too much out of all the details of these leaves. We'll just interpret that a bit and get some of these lights out of here. We don't want too much light right down the bottom, so I'll just cover those over a bit. And go. And I think it could be time to let this dry. So just spattering in a few bits of, because this is now a little slightly more watery than my background. You see I'm getting some lovely little starburst type things happening in there as well. Some of you might be familiar with that technique for using salt to get that look. Funny thing is, if you try and do that in Jamaica, it doesn't work because it's way too humid here. So I'm coming back to my desk now to see if we can, oh, my sign's falling off, that's nice. Yeah, any questions at all? Well, I'm just gonna let that dry a bit and then I'll probably give it a bit of a hair dryer. So one of the things that I usually show people in a live demo is some of the paintings that I've had which are put onto clothing and stuff. The top I'm wearing is actually one of my paintings that's made by Vida, V-I-D-A, and I support them because they're a humanitarian and very ecologically conscious company. They only produce things made to order, and so they don't have any end of years lines to get rid of and things like that. And the whole thing is driven by artists doing the selling and so they cut out all the middlemen and the packaging and all of that kind of stuff. And instead of that money goes back to pay for education for the people in the factories. So whilst the artists don't actually make much money out of it, you kind of feel like you're doing something good for some of the people that need more help in the world. They give them literacy and numeracy classes and sort of follow their progress through becoming supervisors and things like that. So it feels good. Okay. So Any more questions? No questions?
Can't see any yet.
No.
Haven't got any at the minute.
Maybe, I don't know if they're comfortable with typing them in. If anyone wants to, if you want to ask a question, you know, you could unmute yourself and then mute back again after you've asked your question, if you'd rather do it that way. Maybe it's too early in the painting process to have a lot of questions. Okay.
What size is the paper?
Oh yes, it's a half sheet, so it's 15 by 22 inches, half of a full sheet.
And what oil pastels are you using, Claire?
Which brand? It's just Reeves, so they're just ordinary. Yeah.
And the pastels did the leaves, did they? I didn't see. I couldn't quite work it out.
There are some streaks of pastel. You can see where the white bits are showing here. That's pastel there. There are some textural sort of bits on some of the leaves. I didn't do the entire leaves. That's the brand. That box is just an ordinary sort of Smith's level. They're nothing too special.
Do you sharpen them if you want a fine line?
I usually find that there's a corner somewhere if you want a fine line, but I don't want to do a lot of fine work. I want it to be more, I'm more pulling off the paper around the outside so that I can go sideways and use them more like a piece of charcoal.
Thank you.
And get the texture to come up. Great question, thank you. How do we spell Vida? Just like you put it there, V-I-D-A, that's right. If you go to my website, I now have two websites, which I'm sure is a bit confusing, but the one that I've always had for a long time, my English one, is susanclaire.art, this one. And you can find links to everything else from there. So there's a link to the Vida section. And I'm also now, the other website, susanclairefineart.com, is based in America, and I'm actually starting to do more selling of prints and stuff through there, because that's where they manufacture them. And I actually have a calendar out. It's my first ever calendar for the 2021, and it's all underwater creatures. So it's sort of geared particularly towards the diving community and snorkelers and people that are missing going in the water, and you know, all of that needs our support at the moment as well, to remind people to try and give up plastic in their lives, and you know, go and buy your soda from a glass bottle and not a plastic one. All of that kind of stuff. Maybe if you see those images, it sort of comes to mind, and you might make a better choice. Or inconvenient. If we're asking people to inconvenience themselves and pay more for things, make the choice that's not the obvious one, I think there has to be, just like when you would go out of your way for somebody that you love or care about. So I sort of see my role in this as a little bit of fostering that feeling of caring and connection for the environment. And then hopefully people will not mind making the more inconvenient choices. Okay, I'm just going to...
Where did you get your printing done? Is that all online when you say you sell printed paintings?
The printing is done to order. So the website is all laid out so that you can have an enormous choice of even mediums. So it doesn't have to be printed on paper. You can have a metal print done. Apparently they're quite the thing nowadays. It's very contemporary looking. So you can have a metal print that floats away from the wall without a frame. It has, you know, like they sell the float on the back that will hang it from the wall and make it stand out. And you can also get things like wood blocks, have a wood block with the print actually printed onto the surface. So you can see slight bits of grain of the wood to add to the texture. And then you've got the canvas wraps, and obviously proper fine art paper, and also a photo type paper.
And who does the printing? What's the company called? Sorry.
It's Bay Photo in California.
Oh,
So
right.
the platform that I've signed up with to do the website is called Art Storefronts. And if any of you are looking to sell your work, I would highly recommend it. I've been looking at joining them for about 5 years and just never really took the plunge, but I felt like lockdown was the right time to do it. Maybe it's a little bit expensive on the surface of it, but you know, if you do go and have a look, do tell them that you saw have a look at my site and tell them you got it from me, and that would be great. It's they're also teaching you the marketing as well as having the platform there and facilitating everything for you. So it's quite a time investment, to be honest. But hey, if you can't do it now, when can you, right? So I'm going to just get this little dryer and then move on. We're nearly up to our 1 hour. Oh, goodness me. For adjusting the angle, didn't tighten it up properly. That's still a good view.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. I'll probably mute myself just for a second so that you don't have to hear the hairdryer, okay? Okay, I'm back. So the next step then is going to be adding some definition. So I'm moving on to using a smaller brush. This one is a size 5 quill. And I want to really bring out some of these flowers. They're the main thing. It doesn't really matter if we don't have too much more detail in the leaves at all. So we're working on the flowers, and what I like to do to get these to glow nicely is to use a really rich, thick, you probably know that as you work into a wash, you've got to add consistently more thick mixtures, otherwise it will bloom out and make a cauliflower. So we want a nice, rich, thick red, the same red, and then we can also add in some other colours to give it a little variety and excitement.
So it's Windsor red.
Windsor red, yes. Oh, I do use Winsor & Newton almost exclusively, with a few Daniel Smith colours, but they're the professional grade watercolours, and I find they give a lovely glow. So for ease of movement and not leaning on your own work, I usually work from the top to the bottom. However, if you want the distant ones to look more misty, remembering you're going to want that to be a bit paler at the back there. So I'm just looking for shapes that I can do. I really want to minimize the amount of brushwork that I do in every situation. So I'm looking for, how can I do one brush stroke per petal pretty much, or just two, you know, it's a matter of less is more. There's a way to kind of twist the brush as you lift it, and that helps to get definition and shape into the, when you can get pointy ends to your petals without really doing too much work. Okay. Thirsty brush, so we need more paint. And of course, this is going to totally bring these flowers forward. Some places you've got, you know, one layer and then another layer below it. At this stage, it doesn't matter if I run the two together. We'll add some darks on later to give you the different layering between the two. So if it looks like I'm running details together, that is actually intentional. Okay. Beginning to look a bit more festive. So we've got some here. Some of these flowers, because they're more horizontal, you get these strange kind of shapes to the petals. And I want the red to be behind those little yellow actual flowers. So the red bracts will pass behind them and triangular shape in there as well. So I'm looking more for, at this stage in the background here, I'm looking more for outline shapes, patterns, than I am the exact details on each petal as yet. Now, while that's still wet, before these dry totally, I want to have one more going out a bit further. I want to add in some detail so that it blends together a little bit. So I'm going to go back to my larger brush, even though it's, I'm only going to be using the point of it, and I'm going into my alizarin crimson. So this is going to give us an opportunity to add a little depth into where one petal overlaps another. So we could wait and do this after this is dry, but then I would want to blend it in a bit more. Okay, that's not thick enough. I could go down to a smaller brush actually and do this. It would probably, yes, I think we will. Since I need the intensity, so this is a number 8, I think. Making sure I've got a nice, strong mixture of alizarin crimson in this brush. I don't want too much fluid, so I should be dabbing it onto my paper towel, which I seem to have lost. And then adding that into the lower portion of this petal here, so that you get a definition between the upper petal and the lower one. And then we can create the shape of that upper one by adding dark onto the lower one. This is going to be sort of a way of working through some of these. Dark in the centre there would be good. Okay. Moving back to the brighter red, it's not showing up in the centre there enough. And I'm going to dab out some of that heavy red there because there's some lighter bits in it. Okay. There's a little flower over this side. Don't want to make too much of that. One of the difficulties I found when creating the composition for this was that every time I thought I had a good composition, I realized there's like a triangle of three flower heads. And it just looked too obvious and contrived. So, you know, that's the way they grow, obviously. But for a piece of art, it just seemed a bit, I don't know, too geometric. So that's why I actually opted for the one where they're growing out in the wild, because they're a bit more sort of overlapping sections and bits where they could blend out. Sometimes I'd like to just have some lost edges and just let them blend out into the background like that. I'm hearing my little solar thing is squeaking like it's not very happy. I'm hoping it's going to last. The power's come back. I can't tell at the moment because, of course, I can't go and look. So let's keep fingers crossed. Okay, so now working on the closer ones. This section of the three that run together here, I'd quite like to have those, yeah, just sort of be quite an abstract shape created together. This paper is particularly thirsty, so if you've worked on it before, you'll probably know that Arsh's paper, I think, is absolutely the most amazing paper in the world. It does take quite a lot of paint, so be prepared for that if you try it. Okay. Trying to simplify it to one brushstroke per petal. Or two. Oh, I do have an online exhibition at the moment. I'm collaborating with 6 other artists from London. Well, they're all based in London. Some of them are from France and places. Oops. Now, see, when something like that happens, you can either panic or you can just say, okay, that's going to be a part of the interesting things in this, in this composition. So you can blot it up. That's one of the things about working vertically. It can be exciting, and you sort of have to let go of everything being totally under your control. I find that the excitement that you get from not quite knowing what's going to happen sort of outweighs the need to be in control for me these days anyway. So, oh, I was talking about my exhibition. So it's called the Winter Show. And if you look it up online and go to online winter show, you'll see it there. Again, you might be interested in this for the sake of future exhibitions for your club, or it's been a platform that's been developed by one of the artists in the group. His name is Simeon Artemanov, and he's a brilliant computer guy. So he's designed the platform, and it involves an interactive walking around tour, you know, where you can virtually go around. It's like you're in an actual gallery. So you're looking at the paintings on walls, and you can move yourself forward or backwards, or look at interesting videos from the artists themselves, or view the information beside the artwork, just as you would in a gallery. It's free to visit, and it's just going to be up for the 2 weeks. Okay, so this is clearly some leafage there that I've missed with the blues, but we'll come back to that later. And here I have another centre, which has some nice bright pieces coming out from it, and then some murkier pieces coming down. And that in a bit murky one. Lizarin is not holding its own. One of the things about these quill brushes is they shed all the time. So it's another little thing you just get used to. one needs to be a bit larger, like there. This one has another coming out that way. Like I said, I'm probably exaggerating the flowers so that there's less gaps between them, because I don't want an enormous lot of green in this painting.
Someone's just put up the link for us to the exhibition.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you very much.
When does it finish?
The 21st. It started yesterday.
Right.
Before yesterday. And actually, every day there's going to be at least 2 artists are in the sort of a chat room with a Zoom link. My days are Friday, it's the 11th, 15th, 17th, 19th, 21st, I think. But you know, all of the artists are interesting and quite varied and different and contemporary. And some of them have, you know, interesting backgrounds and stories to talk about. So I would definitely urge you to go along and get, you know, involved in the chat sessions. They should be linked. I think he's putting them up day by day as to, like, today it's these 2, here's the link, and then tomorrow it'll be, here's the next 2 kind of thing. Okay. I'm sure this happens to you sometimes. I need to put in my little bit of green here because otherwise it's confusing me. So I'm going to go back, add a little bit of green into that so that I know that's my leaf coming forward. And this part is the underneath bract that's changing colour. So that will just help me to work out where I am now. A bit of blue on that one, I think, will help to get the shadow under there. Okay, and we have one more flower to define, and then we need to do a lot of balancing up and stuff. So I'm still working with my brig brush for the main red here, and so this is like my largest flower. This one is the petal that is changing, so I don't want it entirely blotched out the greens and stuff on that one. And just pick up a bit of water. That's a greeny brush, which will do fine because it's actually the end of the bract that's greener. And then I just want to blend that from one to the other so that we get a transition there. Come back and do a bit of detail on that later. So that's actually just lifting out some of the colour because the central vein is the lighter green. You might be able to define some of those veiny bits there as well. Okay, moving back to the red. We have some of these petals going back. They're fairly flat, but wide. So a lot of overlapping petals at this point here. Small one in the back there. So when you get these in the supermarkets in England, I presume they must be grown in hothouses and stuff, are they? I don't actually know.
Yeah. Yes, I think, yeah.
I've been coaxing, I've had a little one that I planted in the garden from a few months ago, and I've been watching it and think, are you going to be red by the 10th of December? But there was no way, it's not mature enough. Oops. Okay. Here we have darker one. That's an example of, now I've got sort of like a war going on between my leaves and my petals. But you know what? It actually sometimes is nice to have some ambiguity going on in your work, and it just adds a little sense of mystery. So whereas I used to get upset by things like that, I really don't worry about it anymore. There's a little bit of red going off there, which might just help to anchor the piece to the edge of the page. So it's good to have an anchor. Showing through right there. When you have something, it's trouble my palette. It's okay, it's old. Okay, so like that one, I don't want it to be quite so important. On these going off the page, so I'm just going to spray them so they get a bit more indistinct and murky. This one is unfortunately a bit of a strange shape, and I think it's kind of distracting because of that. So I think I might just make it a bit more ordinary, even though it may not be exactly what it looks like. So I'm going to add in, oh, it does have a little bit of a sticking up bit there. And, the dual colour one that's coming forward. Probably a bit more red underneath, and then blend out a bit more. There we go. Okay, I've got an area here that needs some work, so I have to look at what that actually is. And okay, so we have some nice bright, there's a nice bright green leaf coming out. It's quite spiky, which I think was the one I defined there. So we'll find a brush that has something greenish. And picking up some sap green, I will just see if we can bring that forward a bit. It's going to need some more dark colours around it to define it a bit better. And then below it, there's definitely quite a bit of dark green and bluey green. So I'm picking up blue and green on the same brush, and we're going to just make that through behind there. This is a very broad leaf that's coming forward. Adding some water so it can blend into the forward. I think the actual, in the photo, it's one of those, it's a damaged leaf, so we'll just pretend that it's looking better than it is. And then there's some darker ones under here too.
Someone's saying, is it a good time to show us the painting, the picture you're working from again?
Oh, sure, if you'd like to, yes, I'll see it again. I did show it at the very beginning on the shared screen, but this is what I'm looking at. So you can see it's...
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me, because of course I'm forgetting that you can't see it again. Yes, so I'm looking for a bit more dark bluish green that can come forward in this section here. Really, I'm looking to add darks underneath the flower to make that look like a shadow that's falling where it goes back in underneath in the undergrowth. So whether or not I've got exactly the right flower shapes doesn't really matter, so long as this is darker under there, so that you get the sense of things coming forward from there. Go. Darker on there. And, oh, sorry, I just spoiled my green and yellow one. Needs a bit more definition, I think. So we'll add a bit of bright yellow onto this bract that's coming forward, because it's one of the ones that's changing colour. So we want some stronger back to, this is the first time really we've gone back to yellow since I put on the first flow. So with my smaller brush now, so I can get a bit more control. The edges of this leaf are quite yellowy. And we want that to come into green at the end there. So you can see where I first put on that yellow with the pastel, that it's giving it a little bit of interesting texture. There's not many places that I want to put in a lot of detail, but when you do have something that's quite distinctive, sometimes it can help just to make sure you've got detail in a few places, and then that sort of sets the tone. I think what I need to do is expand the blue on that, on this leaf here. There we go. The leaf above it is actually some random sort of leafiness there. When I work in acrylics, I do very blocky brushwork, so sometimes I can see where that's playing back and forth into my watercolor work. And it's something I've been meaning to work on more. It's just, I have done a few watercolors where I've just worked with flat brushes, and I quite like the look, how it comes out with just using those kind of brush strokes. Okay, so we need some more blues down in the depth of this. Strong enough to make that changing colour leaf stand forward. These blues can really get quite murky and just blend together down here. Goodness, leaflets. So, pulling in different directions. Again, if we increase the blue underneath here, maybe, let's make the petals stand up a bit. I'm just going to put a little bit into the centre here as well, because quite a lot going on in those centres, with little little branches for the tiny flowers to stand up on top of. I think that one needs also to, I think I'll just make that a little broader, that red leaf, red petal leaf thing, because the yellow centres are going further over. Okay. A skinny one that's sticking out down there. Make more sense of that one. And of course that one needs some darks underneath it. Go back to my flat brush. Picking up blue, and again I want to emphasize the fact that there are underneath sections that are then moving forward. Trying not to be botanical about my approach here. Sometimes it's a hard habit to get rid of. Some darker blue in between here, and then that petal, this leaf on the top here can stand forward a bit. A lot of these leaves are very bluish, so it's quite convenient to be able to just add the blues to get the variety of depth. Got a lot more blue-greens going on in between these two, so I'm going to see if we can add that. I've been waiting because this is all still rather wet, but we can suggest that would be good. Oops. Yes. It'd be interesting to have that run a bit. And we have a lovely leaf over here that we need to define. Again, it's quite bluish green. That's an underneath section for between the leaves, and I'm going to add now some green on top to see if we can get the top leaf to pull forward a bit. It's behind this other flower now. Just mopping up some of these dribbles here that look annoying later on. Seeing some sort of leaves. Just make that sort of disappear into the side there a bit. This one has a lot of dark underneath this lighter leaf, so let's be on top. Sorry, I'm mumbling. Okay. Okay, I'm going to do my standing back from it a bit, because when you're so close up to it, it's very hard to see exactly what's going on. And I can see that whilst these are quite defined, as this is all pretty much of a blur at the moment, and it's too wimpy with its reds. So I need to bolster those up a bit. So going back into my nice big fat red brush, picking up more red and making it more of a thick mixture. So we're talking double cream now. And we're going to add some, not every single place, because we want to leave some of the lights, as we mentioned earlier. It's all too easy to get rid of all the lights when you're painting red flowers, because it's you need to get them to be bold, but they also are catching the light still in places. Change the shape of that a bit. And we have another leaf coming through there. I think that's probably what the problem was. Particularly around the centres, you want a nice contrast between the yellow and the red surrounding them here. underneath here is very dark. Probably want to add some alizarin into that one. I can do that for right now. So I don't know if you know, I've been here in Jamaica since lockdown started. My intention was to be in England for the summer, but of course most bookings were cancelled, and we all know the story, so I'm not going into all of that. But I just thought I'd let you know I do have a studio in Hadley, in Essex, and that's where I teach. Usually would be teaching workshops every 2 weeks, and you know, also I do workshops for like the RHS and the SAA and people like that. But so if you're missing all of that, that was what prompted me to start the Patreon online club. So that, people asking me for, you know, what's the answer? What are we going to do? It's quite amazing that we do. Luckily, that we are living in an age when we do have these digital options, even if they're not ideal. At least we're not left with nothing. Okay. I want to blend that out so that it's not just a lump. And okay, a larger brush so you can get strange there. And the lower leaf, I'm going to add some alizarin. I think maybe I'll add a little blue into that as well, because the alizarin's not really holding its own on top of the red for some strange reason. It usually isn't a problem. So we can add some blues into it as well, that may help. Get some of these underneath ones to look like they are below. There we go. This leaf or bract here, similarly, it's quite dark where it's coming out, and once you get that, then you've got the definition of the one above more clearly. We'll reinforce that reds on that one. Some little some darks around the center of that one there. I think that might help to give us a bit more definition there. Bit of a stem there, and then we'll have
someone's asking, do you ever use watercolor on canvas?
I haven't tried that actually. I know that you can now get watercolor canvas that will accept watercolor. I suppose it's, you know, I haven't found myself with the opportunity to really explore that yet. Have they tried it?
Yes, there's a local teacher who does do that technique, and she teaches it. Yeah.
And it's enjoyable. Hopefully.
It's risky. Well, she says it's
right,
different.
Okay. Different and risky, yeah. Well, that sounds like all watercolor.
Do a different technique.
Right, okay. I should imagine so, because I have used, I don't know if anyone's used Yupo. That's a form of plastic paper.
No.
And that is, you know, I was looking at, over here in Jamaica, we have a little bit of a problem with paper going mouldy. So, especially when you're buying it at the kind of price that Arshes charge, you don't want it to go mouldy before you can use it. So I did look at the idea of using Yupo instead, but I don't particularly like the environmental. You know, it's a plastic after all. I don't really want to encourage more plastic. So for that reason alone, I haven't really pursued it very much. But it's a very strange feeling painting on it. It's like it's, you know, like painting on greaseproof paper. It all slides about, which you can use to advantage if you know, can get your head around doing different things with it. Just stepping back for a minute, see what we're creating here. Okay, this one I think needs to have.
Wendy says they use the Duplo with alcohol inks.
Oh right, yes, it does work better. I found it better. Well, I've only used it with acrylic inks, but yes, it does work better with inks. Interesting, isn't it? There's different options that we have nowadays. Okay. Just want to bring some more green in there. It looks like it's a little bit confusing what's going on there. Oh, I do quite often just scratch into, for instance, if I want veins in a leaf, you know, I'll scratch in with the back like this, which I quite like the look of. Probably not the right place to introduce it at the almost at the end of the painting, but can be a fun one to do. Blend out those lines a little bit. Oops, that was green. Shouldn't have added green there really. Good.
Yes, someone else said they used it when they had a workshop on alcohol inks.
Okay.
And she says alcoholic inks.
Oh, nice. You're not supposed to drink them. Okay, so you can see I'm adding a few more details just to try and get a few places where there's sharpness into things. I like how that's looking. Sometimes I don't want to get rid of this sort of mystery in things, even though it's sort of calling for a bit more explanation. There we go. This part's still very wet, but it needs something more done to it. Let's see what we can add here. I think I see. So just following this sort of pathway of some of these petals, just to try and get a bit more sense into this particular area. I want to make as few brush strokes as possible to explain what's going on. But there's some layering going on here that really needs explanation, I think. A bit of definition. Better. I'm going to go back to, let's just see if we can, the very light bit there that's distracting because it's pink, so it's not really the right colour for right there. Just going to add a bit more blue into there so it blends into the general backgroundness better. We probably want some darker blue greens around this one. Not a lot, because this is the lighter side of the arrangement. So I just want to get rid of some of those strong lights in between there. Go. And maybe a little bit of dark as we come out towards the edge underneath of those. So. Okay. At this moment, I'm going to do something a bit unorthodox, maybe. I want to sort of finish the piece pretty much for you by the time we're finished. I might actually probably work on these flowers quite a bit more if I had unlimited time. But just for right now, I want to show you something that I quite often do to add drama into the piece. So we've turned it upside down, and I need a nice, good mixture of the colours that I've already used. I like to just use a few colours in my paintings and you know, create darks from them by mixing those colours together. So at this point, yes, I will mix in the palette. I'm picking up some blue to add into my big puddle of red, some alizarin crimson, and I need some green. So this is going to give me sort of a muddy dark colour, which is going to give me a lovely, hopefully atmospheric, jungly feel. Moving it towards the green-blue sort of side of that. At the moment it's looking like a muddy brown, so I don't quite want muddy brown, but we'll add a bit more blue. And I'm not mixing it thoroughly, so I may get variation in the stuff that I'm picking up and applying. So for this now, what I want to do is to really get a feeling of difference between the background and the foreground. So I want to apply this with a large brush, and I'm going to use, I'm going to use this big quill brush I've been using for the reds. This one, and I'm going to have my spray bottle in my hand. Where's it gone?
Somebody's asking if you could name your colours again, please.
Oh yeah, sure. So I've used Windsor Red, Alizarin Crimson, French Ultramarine, Permanent Sap Green. Those are the three colours I'm mixing for this dirty mixture. So here we go. Sometimes it helps turn the reference picture upside down as well, but I haven't done that. So probably not going to talk much while I'm doing this because it takes a little bit of concentration. The idea is to get it moving. and get maybe some random sort of gestural brush marks into it here and there. I have to do a nice clean-up job on the floor afterwards. And yes, I really want to try and get a horizon line without losing all the lights that we created in that first pass. So there should be variety because of the variety in the colours that are underneath. And hopefully some of those will still shine through. It's over here. Obviously, some of these darks will belong amidst the rest of the painting in places. Like I'm dying to put it underneath, underneath in this gap here. Let's just do that for the sake of integration. I'm not so sure that that's exactly the right place. Never want to have a colour that's just only in one place. I have created this colour from the other colours in the painting, so it shouldn't be too strange anyway, but okay, let's see. This is always a bit of a touch and go because it's hard to know when it's cooked. Obviously, the paint is going to keep running and doing its thing for a little while more. So I'm going to now turn it over and see what we've got. So that will need an eye keeping on it because I don't want, obviously I don't want runbacks and cauliflowers to occur where it's kind of wet around the edges. So if I were diligently, just doing a painting, I would keep my eye on that as opposed to coming to entertain you guys. So some other places that we could do things like scratching into that background to give a sense of there's a lot of bits of twigs and stuff like that back there. I'm not so sure if I want to do that because I think it would just conflict with the idea is to make these stand forward and the back just be sort of indistinct. We've got a couple of places where there's some gorgeous light coming through, which is why I've been trying not to cover them up. But in actual fact, it's probably not doing me any service because the eye is going back there to those instead of staying forward with the subject matter. So probably would be a good idea to blend that out a bit. Same with this one. although there's some green leaves there, so maybe we can just add a bit more green in there. Might take it back, yes. That's good. Okay. This flower still needs a bit more impact, I think. Do that quickly. Some points where I can add the details. This one doesn't have enough detail in it either. Something like this going on here. Okay. Let's add a little bit more red onto this one, which is our main flower after all. A couple of layered flowers there, I think, petals that are getting lost with each other. And very rich over this side. Okay, and it hurts to give a bit of red spatter in here, I think. We've got exciting red flowers. A bit of red spatter around the place. Okay. I think I'm going to leave it at that point and come back and answer any questions you might have. I'll come back and take it off my other.
Your white mat, Claire, you could put round it. It's the dark down one side is a taking from the left-hand side as we look at it.
Yes, right.
The board.
Yeah. I don't have a white mat the right size, I'm ashamed to say.
But just white paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, that's better.
I did mean to show you a couple of other paintings that I've done in this style. Of course, this Bird of Paradise, the blue version.
Lovely. Lovely.
Side.
Yeah, that's lovely.
That's good.
That's better. Oh, yeah. Now, yeah.
Much better.
Yeah, sorry.
Mm.
Really, yeah, just, and here's another one that's a thumbergia, type of thumbergia that grows in my neighbour's garden. It's, life-size blooms. They just hang like about a foot long.
Very
Wonderful, aren't they? Very tropical.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. And I was, as I said, I was trying to avoid having a very red and green, you know, Christmas card looking painting. I think it probably could do with a bit more work to it, but I hope you've got the gist of how I like to sort of interpret it rather than give you a leaf by leaf account.
Yeah,
Very-
lovely tree painting.
lovely.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely. Really beautiful.
Lovely.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank
I've
you,
enjoyed
Claire.
it. Thank you. And if you want to follow me, I'm on Instagram and Facebook and all of those things as well.
All right.
All right.
Brilliant. Thank
Okay.
you.
Brilliant.
Lovely.
Thank you.
very much. Take
Thank
care.
you.
now.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy your holiday.
Bye-bye. Happy Christmas.
Bye. Oh, let me put you on.
Happy Christmas, everybody.
Yeah.
Yes.
Put you on
Bye-bye.
gallery view so I can see everyone. Oh, how lovely. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you. Thank you. It's beautiful. Have a happy Christmas.
Yes.
Yes, you too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Still very jealous of that tropical weather.
Yeah, well, it's
Yes.
winter here too, but it's definitely better than you've got. So sorry about that.
It's dark
Happy
here.
Christmas, everyone.
Merry
Merry Christmas.
Happy
We have
Christmas.